Welcome to the Legal CFO.
Welcome back to the show where clarity meets profitability. This is the Legal CFO with Ryan Kimler, the founder of Net Profit CFO. If you're a law firm owner looking to get a handle on your finances, grow your bottom line, and finally take control of your numbers, you're in the right place. Each episode, Ryan breaks down the business side of law with straightforward strategies to help your firm run smarter, earn more, and scale with confidence. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about how law firms structure partner pay, how those compensation models affect profitability and behavior inside the firm, and why certain approaches tend to cause financial strain as firms grow. Ryan, welcome back, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me, and excited to dive in today. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Ryan, from a CFO's perspective, what usually starts to break down financially when a firm's partner compensation model isn't well structured?
Definitely money available for growth. That's probably one of the number one things. Just money available for growth and money available to pay bills. You'll start having those moments where things will get tight, right? Because all of a sudden something shifts in business. Maybe we've taken on a couple more expenses. Maybe we have some clients that pay us late. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're really tight and we're barely making payroll next time, right? So when you've got a compensation model that really doesn't work for the firm, that's not scalable and really not done in a profitable way, that's where you're first going to see it, is tight on cash flow, tight on money on hand, and just sometimes, again, just barely getting by paying all those bills.
How do different partner compensation approaches affect the firm's profitability beyond just how, fair they feel to partners involved?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your structure. Some partners and some agreements, they've got guaranteed payments that they've got to keep up with. So, they've got the agreement in place that we're going to make these payments to ourselves, every single month in and month out, no matter what happens. That can definitely, again, really affect profitability and how much money is available and left over, because we're not looking at what else is going on in the business, right? And what happens when we have a month where maybe we have a couple of annual bills hit, like maybe your annual legal research subscription, or maybe your annual malpractice insurance, right? When you're making guaranteed payments and they're just a set amount and it's every single month, every partner gets this, right? And it's not based on profitability, then you can definitely have months, you can have quarters where, profitability is going to drop, right? Because you have those annual bills. So again, that can lead to things being really tight. Like we don't have enough money to pay the bills, right? So doing it, again, it depends on structure, but a structure like that can be really strenuous versus a couple of the firms that I work with, they have a structure where they make a quarterly distribution to the partners, but it's based on the firm's performance. So, that's where we're really taking into account, hey, in our business, January, February, March, we know is always slow, right? And we have some annual bills hit, right? When you have both of those things together, we know quarter one bonuses are not going to be huge, right? Or the quarter one distributions to all the partners. We know it's not going to be huge, right? But maybe quarter four was huge, right? So just, again, really knowing your structure, understanding it, making sure all the partners are on the same page, and making sure that it really works for your firm so that you're taking into account profitability and your slow periods really, really makes a difference in the cash that's on hand and the stress that you're going to feel as you go to pay all your bills and make payroll and things like that. So it depends on structure, but I like for the structures to be conducive to firm profitability and how the firm is really doing.
What tends to happen financially when firms rely too heavily on equal splits or purely origination-based, compensation?
So origination-based compensation is really interesting to me, right? And I think where some firms get in trouble, especially, if you're not the big, huge law firm, right, with 200 lawyers, right? All of a sudden, and I've seen some agreements that, it's not just the partners, but every attorney gets 10, 15, 20, 25% of what they bring in. look at your bottom line before you start giving away originations, right? Because if you're not, let's just say you want to give 15% of origination credit to, all the partners or maybe even all the lawyers, right? A lawyer coming in, wants origination credit. Do we have 15% profits before we do that? Right? Because if we don't, let's say you're running at a profit margin of 10, it's really impossible for us to give away 15,
Hmm.
right? And so looking at that beforehand, again, this is where that kind of origination model can get some firms in trouble. Sometimes it looks good on paper to give away origination credits and pay lawyers on a bonus based on that kind of a schedule. But if we're not priced properly and we don't have the proper efficiencies in place, then we could really get the firm in trouble and not set ourselves up for a good financial situation.
How does the way partners are paid influence decisions around delegation, collaboration, or holding on to work?
Again, depending on structure, right? I've also seen, some bonus percentages that are based on who's managing the work. So, when you're given credits on the revenue for, kind of who puts the final signature on it and who managed the work and who reviewed the work product that some of the staff attorneys did, that could become a bottleneck, right? Because sometimes the lawyer that originates the work, wants that, management credit as well is what I kind of call it. And so they're less willing to delegate out work, right? And again, you become the bottleneck when you want that, you want that management credit. And I've also seen firms that they give out both, right, to kind of balance that out. So, one lawyer gets the credit for the origination, and if they end up delegating it out, another lawyer gets the credit for the final management of the product. So you can do some things there to kind of help. But to me, you know, scalability, right? That's what I'm always looking at. Is it profitable? Is it scalable? And a lot of these models sometimes just really restrict those two things. And so it's not uncommon for me to come into situations, start working with clients, and we've really got to sit down and have a review on, how did we get to the model where we're at? Where did it come from? Is it a model that's going to fit for us long term, especially as we scale? Uh, or is it a model that we need to make some tweaks to? That's very common for me to see, just because we're putting ourselves in some tough situations sometimes.
So, what financial data do you look at to evaluate whether a partner compensation model is actually sustainable over time?
I actually dive in and I'll look at a handful of cases. Um, I'll look at profitability on those cases, right? And if needed, definitely from each kind of practice area as well. Because, like for example, let's say I've got a law firm that does personal injury and estate planning. Obviously, they can be very complementary, right? But two different types of cases, two different types of payouts on cases, very different types of practice areas. Um, again, I'm gonna take a subset or kind of a small sample size of each practice area and really look at how are we bringing this work in, how are we paying out on it? How are we priced on it? Obviously, they're both flat rate. One's contingency, one's not, most likely. Or the estate planning is most likely flat rate, right? I think most estate planning firms are not billing hourly at this point. They're all pretty well flat rate. So both flat rate cases, but one's contingency, one's not. So, and then again, I'm going to look at profitability just on those cases individually. Look at the time that we've got involved, look at who's involved, and see, well, are we paying out origination credit to the attorney that brought the work? Are we paying out management credit? All those kind of things. I'm going to apply the model and see if I look at 5 to 10 cases just to start out with, are there cases that we're losing money on, right? And if there are, what percentage is it, right?
Hmm.
If I look at 10 and we're losing just a little bit of money on one, can we pivot that, right? Can we, or can we look to avoid, especially on the PI space, if we have a list of characteristics, can we look to avoid those types of cases in the future, right? Because obviously, the name of the game, we don't want to lose money on any cases. But that's really how I start evaluating structures, really getting in and just looking at some random individual cases and try to track everything through revenue brought in the door and expenses, and where are we netting out? How is that contributing to the firm? Because we also know, after we pay the direct case expenses, we've got overhead to pay too, and we've got people to pay. So I try to work it through so that literally every single individual case, I can track it through and say, this is our profitability, and really evaluate, is this partner compensation model going to work with that or not?
As a firm, grow and add more attorneys to the staff, how do partner compensation structures usually need to change to avoid creating profit bottlenecks?
So obviously, the more partners that we add, the more complicated it can get to track, especially if you've got a structure that's complex, right? And also, from my experience, you bring on that next partner, and they don't always fully understand how all the complexities of the bonus structure and payment structure works. And so, I really look at those things. If that's a plan, some of the owners I work with, it's like, no, this is it. We're not adding any more partners, right? And that makes things easier because we know that we don't have to pivot in the future. Everybody gets on the same page. We know what we're going with. Um, but I really, again, if we are looking to add partners as we grow and move into the future, I really, really look at, does everybody understand it, understand the implications of it? And then also, I really kind of just stress test the model. Well, what happens, if I look at maybe the worst case scenario or our least profitable scenario, what happens if we have that times 100, right? And it's a really, really extreme case. But if I can get to a position where we're literally losing money on this deal, it's probably not a deal we want to move forward with as a firm, right? Because if there is that opportunity, we don't ever want it to get there. That's not why we're in business. So that's the best way that I go about it, is really test the extreme ends of everything. Like, what's the
Mm,
worst case scenario inside of the rules of this model,
right.
and what does it look like if we really scale it, right? And things really take off.
Yeah, right. So in firms where partners contribute very differently, how can compensation be structured without creating that, long-term financial drag or resentment?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I have definitely worked with firms like that where, one attorney is, big on the rainmaking side, and they're out there,
Yeah.
doing the business development work, building those relationships, right? Then we've got another partner that handles all the consultations when they come in, right? And then we've got another partner that really handles like managing the business side of things and marketing, and working with all the other parts of the business, HR a lot of times, right? And then we've got another partner that manages just the workflows and getting all of the work done. They all have to work together, right? Um, I'm sure that each one of those partners could probably make an argument that, maybe my work's the most important. Without it, nothing's happening. But it is, when you have different jobs in that way, right? It can be really, really tough to come up with a compensation model that's balanced and works for everyone, right? In the situation that I just gave, obviously, if we just gave credits for origination, we would have one partner getting the majority and the other three wouldn't get much, right? So you can get into some really, really complicated situations. I think what's really, really important, and what I've really seen work well, is just that we have a group of partners, could be two, three, four, even more, that recognize, hey, I recognize that my part's important, and the other parts that I'm not doing are equally as important. And a lot of times, how it works out is I'm happy that I don't have to do it, right? Like, what I've found is a lot of times strengths and weaknesses just naturally come together. And that's why they became partners, right? It's because, well, this person loves doing all the stuff that I don't love doing, right? And I think if we can have that kind of an opportunity, then why not just look at, well, let's grow it together. Let's do the best that we can together. Let's be thankful we're not having to do the stuff we don't like to do and that somebody else does like to do it. And then let's bonus everybody based on how well the firm does, right? And as we have internal challenges and we need to make things change, maybe structurally, we work together on that, right? That can work very, very well. And I've seen that dynamic work very well inside of firms that have partners.
So when partners are considering changing their compensation model, what financial risks or, unintended consequences should they understand before making that move?
So first and foremost, let's look at the historicals, right? If you're looking at changing your model, what would that model have done last year, right? We're here in February 2026. If you're going to change your model in 26, let's look at 25's numbers. How would we have done if we changed the model and if we already had this in place in 2025? Does it really work for us, right? And then, the other thing is so let's do that first. Let's test it. Let's see if it works. And then if we're going to put it in place, right, and we all agree to it and we're going to move forward with it, and then we find out it doesn't work, right? What is our process for unwinding it or undoing it, right? Because I think, again, this is where some firms can kind of get into trouble. We change the compensation structure, and then all of a sudden we find out like it doesn't fully work financially. And then, maybe one or two of the partners wants to stay with the new structure. One of the two of the partners want to get rid of the structure and go back to the old way. And it was much easier and it doesn't work financially. And then it's like, how do we handle that? Well, now we kind of have conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just looking forward into the future, like, does this work for us long-term? Does this scale? Again, I really, really test the extreme end of things. Whatever you're looking at, whatever factor, what happens if we multiply this times 100? Does it work? Right? Because again, I think that's where firms can get into trouble, is when they put in something new, they think they've got to stick with it no matter what.
Yep.
And, no matter what the numbers say or no matter what profitability says, they just, want to stick with it because it's the new terms that we agreed to. That can definitely get you into trouble for sure.
Ryan, thank you so much again, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And thank you all for listening to The Legal CFO with Ryan Kimler. If you're ready to get financial clarity for your law firm, visit netprofitcfo.com to learn more about working with Ryan and his team. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, share it with another law firm owner, and leave a review, because the more you know, the more you grow. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.